engineer, of course. And to give you an idea how much Germany spends every year in this field, I found some numbers of euros. The total expenses, this is the public expenses for science without industry research, because industry research is a little bit difficult to determine. Maybe they would even not publish this. So the youngest or recent number I found was for 2018, and there was 105 billion euro spent for research and development, and 280 billion euro was spent for education. To be honest, I don't know exactly where they made the border here between. For example, if you have a PhD program, it's actually both. It's education and research. So just to give you an idea that Germany really spends a lot of money in this sector. So first, some comments about science in Germany. And there is in German one fluent word, one phrase, wer schreibt, der bleibt, which means the one who writes will stay. That translates to you should write publications. It's not so much about master thesis or so, or a PhD thesis. This is a kind of fundament. It's more about publications, but I will say a few words later. And then actually this is not well known, because this is my idea. Und wer spricht, der sticht, which would translate to approximately, and the one who talks takes the trick, that means gains the prize. So you have to present what you do, not only write, not just sit in your little office and write the publication, but also make it public. And making it public means you have to talk about. We have in a very nice translation of science in German words, it's Wissenschaft. Wissen is knowledge, and Schaft comes from creation. So somebody who creates knowledge, the person does science. And you only create knowledge if you bring it to other persons. They should know it, not you. It's not your knowledge. First, yes, but then it only becomes knowledge if you publish it or if you talk about it. Best is if you do both. So, a more international phrase is publish or perish. So if you don't write, if you don't publish, you will disappear in science. So to make it short, survival in science means create input and output. I have now talked about output. So output is this level here, papers. So this is the level you are primarily addressing if you are a PhD student, maybe if you are a master student or the postdoc level. For them, it's all about publications. Input in science means money for research. So as I have told you several times, you have to convince whosoever to give you money, either in a written or in an oral format. So write grant applications, for example. This is one of my major tasks. This is a more kind of advanced level then. Well, this is then more the professor's level. Everything else like university politics, taking part in endless meetings of commissions, etc. So, I would say generally in Germany, people really care for the quality of publications. And here is some criteria. So the first important issue is it should be in English, because then the world can understand it. If you publish in Ukrainian, only Ukrainians can understand it. If you publish in Russian language, there is for sure few people more who can understand it. If we publish in German, it's pretty similar than publishing something in Russian. This is not something the world can understand, so English. Second, international. The primary choice should not be the, let's say, I don't know whether this exists, monthly scientific advertisements of the Taras Shevchenko University. So it should be something which addresses a more international auditory, and that means international journal. Then it should be peer reviewed. So there is a system of publication and peer review. Peer review means somebody reads what you have produced and gives you a review. And then sometimes it becomes very disappointing for you, because then there's different categories. Actually, the best one is accepted, without comments. Very rare. Actually, this, I would say this almost never happens. The second one is also not too bad, rejected. Because then you can just directly go to another journal and try there. Hopefully with the comments from the reviewers. And then there's two more categories. This is accepted, but with minor or major changes. Minor changes normally is a little bit about language issues, and well, include here a citation or there a sentence and justify this and blah. So normally this is easily major revision is maybe I have to do more experiments. This is nightmare. So then you have to think about whether you directly go to another journal, depending on what people request. So I remember once I had major revisions, they asked me for animal experiments. Okay, like 3 years more of work, so I don't know. So this is a system of peer review, and sometimes it's really tedious. But this is very important to maintain quality in science. Then potentially you would look for impact factor. Who knows what is an impact factor? Please, short.
If one measures the citation number of papers in the journal.
Yeah, exactly. So it is calculated, and the impact factor gives you an idea about how frequently the journal is cited by other authors. So it's kind of rough estimation of the quality, or at least of the distribution. And most scientists consider impact factor to be very important, and I, in a way, agree. So you should look a little bit that your journal is not bottom end. But this is something your supervisor probably will tell you, because he's also the last author of the publication in most cases. And for him, it's even then more important than for you that it's not a bottom-end journal, but let's say a journal which you would say is in Q1 or Q2 or so. This is a quantile 1, so the upper 20% or the second 20% or so on. The last one I put in brackets, open access. Open access means it is published and it is available at once for everybody in the world. And normally you have to pay for this to make it open access. Otherwise, normally the reader pays for reading. So either the author pays or the reader pays. If the author can pay it, actually it's nice because everybody could read it and it's easily accessible and will be quoted potentially more frequent, but you have to have some funding. And then sometimes it is an opportunity to have an author from abroad who has better funding sources than maybe your senior author has, and then maybe people have some particular funds for publication. So my university has a publication fund, for example. The German Science Foundation has particular publication funds, etc. But this is something which should be always considered, but is something which is also related to money. So, if you apply for a position in industry, but especially in academia, it is important, or it's better if you have already something. This addresses now the student at the earlier stage of career, so bachelor or so. Even if you are at this degree in your career, you could try to have something, at least, let's say, maybe it's only a poster publication in Ukrainian, but this is something that what you can list in your CV. And what I, for example, always tell my bachelor students when it comes to writing the thesis, it is nice if your thesis contains one page, contributions to publications or publications of the author. And then if there is, let's say, 2 poster publications on small conferences in Ukraine, this is already something which may lift you a little bit above the average. And this is the first step. And then later, of course, it is more important to go for this list here. Okay, so this is some general. So now a bit about universities in Germany. We have 426 universities, 300 are public and a bit more than 120 are private. You have already heard there is no real study fees. There is more like an administrative fee which allows you to use public transport and eat in the Mensa for a reduced price. Of course, the private universities will charge you, therefore they are private. Universities, I got the idea that the previous speaker said something, that there is regular universities and universities of applied study, or maybe she said something about technical universities, I don't know. Regular universities is 1/3 approximately compared to the universities of applied sciences. This is the type of university I'm in. These are mainly former engineering schools. The difference is smaller normally, but this is also changing. Normally not the opportunity to directly award a PhD title. Smaller study groups, more privacy or direct interaction. So I know all my students in the master courses by name. I can say everybody's name, and I have also a very good idea about all students in my master program, how well they are performing. And then there's some more like special universities for theology, arts, etc., and administration. So here again a bit of comparison. Universities of small applied sciences, smaller study group, more direct interaction, also smaller budgets, of course, in campuses. So this is more cozy. Biggest universities may have more than 50,000 students. You have heard this from some presentations already. And among the 50 big ones in Germany, from all these 400, there's only 5 universities of applied sciences. Maybe the previous speaker has said something about study programs. We have altogether more than 20,000 study programs in Germany. And there is almost 3 million students. Germany has a population of, I think, 82 million or so. Approximately not altogether, 2/3 at the universities and 1/3 at the universities of applied sciences, with 50,000 professors and 100,000 staff. So now, something about PhD titles. I mean, some of you are not bachelor master students, some go for a PhD, so I will say a few words about PhD titles. Normally you would think, if you think of a PhD ceremony, you would think of such a doctor head here, the traditional one, and since I studied at a very traditional university and even more traditional medical faculty, I really received something like that. But in Germany, especially in natural sciences, it is very common to have more this here or that, which is prepared by your colleagues and in a way represents your PhD life. And as you see, it seems here this was a heavy life. I don't know how long she studied as a PhD student. My PhD doctor even had a little swimming pool on top with fish inside. I mean, not real fish, not real water, kind of a jelly or so. So sometimes colleagues really spend lots of time to create these ads here. Altogether in Germany we have 28,000 titles, but this includes the medical doctors. And I would say they contribute to the bigger proportion here. There's approximately 1,800 mechanical engineering, 1,000 in informatics, and 900 in electrical engineering. So now I come from the universities to the institutes. We have non-university research represented by different associations, and they are named after famous researchers or people who are considered to promote research a lot. You have maybe heard about Helmholtz, and this is here Leibniz, a bit older, or Max Planck, and Fraunhofer. Actually, he was not a scientist, he was an engineer for optical devices, and named after these four outstanding promoters of science are four associations, which I will briefly introduce on the next slides. They have different tasks. Then we have governmental institutes and research associations. So the big one is the Helmholtz Association, which address huge questions in science. And there's 18 independent research centers in Germany with a whole budget of 5 billion euro per year. Altogether 42,000 persons in this field, with an average of 2,300 per institute. This is quite big. As you may remember, I come from the German Cancer Research Center. This is one of these institutes with more than 3,000 people staff. As the name says, it's dedicated to cancer. Then there's a very famous kit, Karlsruhe Institute for Technology. And then we have the German electron synchrotron. They are addressing radiation research. So then there's a Leibniz Association. As you see, it's more non-university institutes, approximately 100. Budget is smaller, also the number of people smaller, which means they are approximately less than 10% in size per institute compared to the Helmholtz institutes. And it's a very wild mixture in this association. And I just took here two, the Leibniz Center for Informatics, it's one of the smaller ones, and the Institute for High Performance Microelectronics is close to Wildau with 300 persons. Then we have the Max Planck Association, and Max Planck, the society and the institutes address basic or fundamental research, pretty far from application. With 86 institutes abbreviated, this is like a brand, MPI, with a budget comparable to the Helmholtz, to the Leibniz Association, also comparable in numbers of persons, a little bit bigger, but still only maybe 10% of the Helmholtz Institutes. And here is few examples, dynamics of complex technical systems, informatics or software systems, but really kind of fundamental research. So they will not investigate or no, they will not develop software for application. They will more investigate how to bring something into the direction of application. Then there is the Fraunhofer Association, the fourth, and they are dedicated to applied research. So actually, they are a little bit kind of the counterplayer to the universities of applied sciences. Sometimes we even apply for the same funds. Sometimes we work together with them. It's altogether 80 research institutes. Budget is a bit higher than for the other associations. Numbers is a little bit comparable, a bit higher, and numbers in persons is also per institute a bit higher. Here is few examples of Fraunhofer institutes like algorithms and scientific calculations, always addressing application, pretty much research and development with industry, information technology, applied and integrated security, media technology, digital medicine, electronic nanosystems, and you see I have chosen a lot from this digital sector. I could have chosen a different selection addressing the biosector. As you see, within 80 institutes, you can have different fields. Then we have governmental institutes. They are run by the federal government, 38, or by the federal states. And actually, the best known maybe in the world is the famous Robert Koch Institute. They have more than 1,000 people staff. Most of them are in permanent positions because they have to fulfill governmental tasks. They are an authority. So everything around Corona is somehow, of course, decided by the government, but the government listens to what the governmental institute, in this case the Robert Koch Institute, gives them as an advice. And here I said, coming soon, this is something we are kind of really excited that just like, I would say it's 200 meters from my office, there is a subsidiary open for from the Robert Koch Institute for Artificial Intelligence with maybe something like 200-person staff working only in that field. So now a little bit an idea, where does the funding come from? The euros, so it could be institutional funding. That means funding within an institute from their budget. For example, if they open a PhD program. It could be European funds. This is something maybe your seniors sometimes also address, if it's possible, if Ukraine is also eligible. Then funds by the federal ministry, funds from the ministries of the federal states. Then we have the famous German Science Foundation. Normally they are not so willing to give funds to the universities of applied sciences. Unfortunately, they are more into fundamental research funding. Then we have numerous foundations. I will say a few words. The German Academic Exchange Service, we heard a bit about. Then we have, of course, industry funding, and also an interesting idea is to get orders from industry to do research. And now to give you a little bit an idea how strategies in research in Germany are arranged or set up. So we have the so-called high-tech strategy of the federal government. This was set up, and I think this is a strategy for a decade or so, I'm not sure about. And it is, as you see here, divided in 3 huge fields: societal challenges, Germany's future competencies, open innovation, and venture culture. So these are 3 big fields. And and then there are subfields I address on the next slide here within societal challenges. There's, for example, health and care, mobility, safety, and security. And here in the future competencies, for example, there is societal participation. This is something I mentioned several times, that society has to be integrated into science, or we have to present science to our society, to the taxpayer. Then the skills base, that means skills have to be developed, and technological base, this is more about instrumentation. And then here on the other side, open innovation and venture culture. This points already into the direction of bring it into application, make it make companies. So fields like putting knowledge into effect, strengthening entrepreneurial spirit. So this is about startup culture. And then using knowledge and innovation networks. So this is more like bringing people together. This is a little bit, well, I would say, not very precise, but it gives a rough overview how it is structured. And then it is, those fields are subdivided in dozens of initiatives and missions, and these are then organized in calls. The scientist normally sees the call. So there is, for example, in the field developing Germany's future competencies, the technological base. I just switched one back. This is this one, technological base. Yeah. Then there is the mission, putting artificial intelligence into practical application. This is the structured idea behind. Then within this mission, there's initiatives, artificial intelligence strategy, centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, Germany's platform for artificial intelligence. And then within these initiatives, there is calls, and there's, for example, a call, research and development and use of AI methods in small, medium enterprises or innovation in higher education driven by AI and big data. This is what we normally see and recognize as a scientist. This is what is called a call. There's a deadline. You have, within the deadline, you have to write an application to fund money from this here, which is then somehow in this whole strategy. So, to say a few words, and maybe some of you, because I left my smartphone over here, there, maybe some of you can check my time schedule, that I may rush in the end a little bit, not to talk too long. Funds by the Ministry of Education and Research is one of the most frequently used resource or source for funding. Normally, it's for small clusters of several partners, up to 5 or so, maybe 300,000 for each partner, or a bit more for staff, material, and infrastructure. This is an average funding scheme, mostly for academia, but always, more or less always, with industry participation, and always along the described strategy. This is important. So then we have, for example, funds by the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. This is for me, for example, the most important funding source, because we are applied. It's mainly for industry, but with support from academia. So frequently we have industry partners, and we write the grant application together with the industry partner in a program here, or ZIM. I don't go into the details of this. Normally, this is a program without any special subject. A lot is along strategies, calls, etc. And this is particularly tailored for small and medium enterprises, and the academic partner is always the junior partner. But I play this role without a problem, because we are the drivers then of innovation normally. Very fast, relatively small grants, and always co-financing from industry is required. Then there is funds from other ministries of the federal states. For example, our Ministry for Science, Research and Culture, but they do not have a lot of money, unfortunately. But what they do is they turn around money from the European Union. This is for me a very important source, the European Union, especially when it comes to regional development. Fortunately, from the point of view of the European Union, the region where we are, and also Senftenberg, I guess, is kind of underdeveloped. So we receive a lot of funds for this development of the region. Mostly it is the so-called pre-market phase, and normally it also requires co-funding. And this is an important issue. My university is very kind of eager to give me co-financing. So if I say, okay, I bring 80 cents, and they have then to say, okay, I give you another 20 cents to make it up €1, this is a pretty good deal. Regional strategies. And one kind of a regional strategy was also already kind of a little bit addressed with the slide of Shavkat Tsamov, with these coal mining pits which have to be transformed into whatever. So there is, for example, a regional strategy in the federal state of Brandenburg, where we come from, which goes into the direction of supporting former coal mining areas. But the metropolitan area, Berlin, Brandenburg, plays more the health economy strategy. And especially for Wildau, it's really nice because we are in between, so we can play either that or that card and say, we are within the health cluster region, or we are a former coal mining area, so money from there maybe. So then, very famous German Science Foundation. Unfortunately, I do not have lots of experience with it because this is mainly for academic research. So if you are a philosopher or a zoologist, then this would be your major funding source. Also, universities of applied sciences are not member of this science foundation. They have a budget of 3.3 billion euro for approximately 31,000 projects. So you can already, if you divide this here, then you can get an idea that the projects are not too big in average. So mainly smaller projects, typically a PhD student funded, some money to do some experiments, but they also have what is called research cluster and excellence initiatives. So if you want to know something about this, you can ask Jevgen. His boss is part of really huge clusters funded by Science Foundation. Then we have numerous foundations, Stiftungen, for different purposes, different amount of money in terms of funds. Sometimes along particular programs, sometimes along particular research fields or some other criteria. Just to show you a few examples, Volkswagen Stiftung, one of the biggest. They have sometimes programs, and they make them always new. And if your idea fits into the program, then you can apply. Then Boehringer Ingelheim Stiftung, this is a drug development, pharmaceutical company. So they fund something, they give funds for medical pharmaceutical research. Robert Bosch, you can have already an idea, they give money for engineering research and development. Well, cancer aid is self-explanatory. Then, for example, Federal German Foundation for the Environment, for environmental research, and the German-Israeli Foundation for Science is independent of a subject as long as you do something as a German together with somebody in Israel. Then we have a real industry of like industry academia networks, especially in the region of Berlin. The government gives a lot of money for setting up an industrial network, and the idea is to have a network manager. And the network manager puts together people from industry, from academia, and then they easily can apply for funds. And here it's some examples. Normally it's along applications or subjects. So for example, multi-TOF technology. This year you heard already about BIM-KI. This is the Bildauer network for artificial intelligence. Glyconet, this is about glycon biology, etc. So I don't know how many we have of this in Germany. And then I don't need to say anything about this, I hope. Everything was hopefully covered. So, I'm at the end. My take-home message for you, takeaway message. I think Germany is really a good place for research and development. Plenty of opportunities for scientists. The environment, the scientific environment, supports and expects quality, but it is really difficult to get a permanent position. So potentially an idea is to do part of a career in Germany and then return here to Ukraine. Actually, what I do not really want to foster is a kind of brain drain. Well, I mean, we also suffer kind of brain drain into the direction of Great Britain or United States. So somehow it's about turning people around. And that's it. Thanks a lot for listening. And I don't know whether we have time for questions now. I'm not sure how to